What if Zoro stayed as a bounty hunter and never joined the Straw Hats crew? What would happen to Luffy and the entirety of the One Piece story? Would the Straw Hats be the same without the green-haired swordsman? Zoro's backstory remains unchanged until Shell Island. There, he saves a little girl, but ends up paying the price of being tied to a pole for a month. Interestingly, to ensure Zoro remains committed to his bounty hunter role, his encounter with Luffy never occurs. Consequently, Luffy never sets foot on Shell Island, but continues on his quest to become the Pirate King. Without Luffy's intervention, Zoro remains bound to the pole for the designated period. Remaining true to his sentence, he retains his status as a bounty hunter in the eyes of the Marines. Thus, he neither joins the Straw Hats nor engages in combat with Morgan. Instead, Zoro continues his career as a bounty hunter, dispatching more pirates to claim their bounties. Eventually, Zoro joined up again with Johnny and Yusaku, two other bounty hunters who became his companions. However, they weren't just as good as him. Nothing exciting happens here, just a man with 3 swords trying to make a living out of claiming bounties. But this mundane routine would soon end after one bounty mission. You see, after the boys had completed one job, they decided to celebrate at a restaurant called Barati. Now that sounds familiar, right? Well, that's because it's the exact restaurant where Sanji was working. As they were eating, much like in the original series, the restaurant was attacked by Don Krieg after Gin, one of the pirates who arrived there when their fleet was destroyed by Mihawk, betrayed Zeph. To defend the restaurant, Zoro, Johnny, Yusaku, and Sanji fend off the pirate attack. Suddenly, before a winner could be decided, Mihawk arrived. Instead of going after the pirates, Zoro took this opportunity to challenge Mihawk to a duel. Still though, the result wasn't any different, and my man lost to a pocket knife. After this incident, Mihawk left, which gave Don Krieg the opportunity to keep fighting. Now, Sanji's the only capable fighter left since Zoro is wounded and Luffy isn't in this timeline. Because of this, they were slowly getting surrounded and pushed back. Zeph ordered Sanji to leave with Johnny, Yusaku, and Zoro. Sanji didn't want to, but Zeph explained that this was his chance to get some rest and take back the Barati when he was ready. After some more debating, Sanji left with them as they escaped. The Barati was eventually taken over by Don Krieg, and the chefs, along with Zeph, were taken as prisoners. Instead of going to Arlong Park after meeting Sanji like in the original story, Zoro, Sanji, Johnny, and Yusaku are now resting up and formulating a plan to take back the Barati. Although Zoro doesn't want to take part in any of this, Sanji forces him to because he hasn't paid yet for the food he's eaten. With Sanji being the brains of the operation, they plan on attacking it at night when all of the pirates are drunk and asleep. Sanji and Zoro will search for Don Krieg and take him out while Johnny and Yusaku will liberate the imprisoned chefs. They wait for their wounds to heal and train to kill time before the big day. They infiltrate the Barati and put the plan into action. Johnny and Yusaku successfully sneak past the pirates and liberate the chefs. With more men on their side, they launch a surprise attack and take out most of the pirates. On the other hand, Zoro and Sanji find Don Krieg and start the battle. At this time, Sanji and Zoro are nowhere near as strong as they are during the Wano arc, and someone like Don Krieg is going to give them a bit of trouble, especially with his armor. They are slowly getting overwhelmed, but both work together. As the fight goes on, they become faster, and their attacks are getting more precise as they locate Don Krieg's openings. Eventually, they defeat Don Krieg, but with a lot of wounds. The dust settles, and they successfully retake the Barati. Because he helped, Sanji says that Zoro doesn't need to pay anymore, and that he can just take the pirates' bounties all for himself. Nothing more is said, though. Sanji doesn't invite Zoro to be a cook because he was useless, and Zoro doesn't ask Sanji if he wants to become a bounty hunter because he just doesn't care. Sanji stays at the Baratie, and Zoro and he part ways. Zoro also separates from Johnny and Yusaku as he thinks it's better to continue his journey solo so that he can become the greatest swordsman in the world. Because his swords were slowly wearing out after his battle with Don Krieg, Zoro decided it was time to buy new ones, which is why he traveled to Logtown. So how did he do this? Well, if Johnny and Yusaku could travel around East Blue, then Zoro can surely find his way to Logtown. He went to the weapon shop, and much like in the original timeline, Zoro acquired the Sandai Kitetsu and Yubashiri by proving himself to the shop owner. Despite having new weapons, Zoro thought that this part of the world wouldn't make him strong, since East Blue was considered the weakest sea. He decided it was time to travel to the Grand Line, but the only problem is that he doesn't know how. Well, he had this great idea to join a group of bounty hunters who were on their way back there. They called themselves Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday. He knew their names were familiar, but decided to play it cool, which might be too smart for him, but let's just go with it. They arrived at Whiskey Peak, and at night, he partied with the townspeople, but realized they were indeed Baroque works. He recognized this because before he ever met Luffy, one of their agents, Mr. Seven, tried to recruit Zoro and even give him a high-ranking position, but he refused and eventually killed the guy. Now, he was surrounded by the entire organization, but seeing that this was Zoro we were talking about, well, he thought it would be the perfect moment to test his skills. He revealed his name, that he knows the truth about him, and that he'll fight anyone who challenges him. And it actually worked! All of the bounty hunters revealed their weapons and true identities. First, they fought him one by one, but after realizing that he was defeating every single one who lined up to fight him, all of them jumped at Zoro at the same time. He didn't even budge and just kept fighting. He even knocked out the nun and the boy who tried to trick him. As he defeated most of the bounty hunters, Mr. Five arrived. Because of this new threat, and with Vivi's identity being revealed, Igaram begged Zoro to protect her. Zoro refused at first since it was none of his business, but Igaram offered him so much money that he just accepted it, thinking it would help him in traveling. He fought Mr. Five and Miss Valentine alone, eventually winning against both of them, even though he was quite injured. He eventually accepted the money from Igaram, and with his help and Vivi's, they hired a private ship that would take him all the way to Sabaudi Archipelago. During the journey, though, one more annoying person arrives, and it was Miss All Valentine. They had a small fight and argument, but she immediately left, never to be seen again. During this time, since Luffy never met Vivi, we can presume that Crocodile successfully took over Alabasta, and Robin didn't pursue her own plans and might have been captured by the world government. This is crazy to know because the Straw Hat's presence essentially liberated the entirety of Alabasta. Nami would have also stayed at Arlong Park and became one of Arlong's subordinates, with her village constantly being oppressed. Luffy might have met Usopp, but both of them won't go that far anyway. Zoro traveled around the Grand Line and eventually arrived at Sabaudi Archipelago. But he did hop off a bunch of other places to get there, mostly fighting pirates and claiming their bounties. Although he made it there safely, Zoro's skills are not as good as in the original timeline, as he did not fight notable enemies like Kaku and T-Bone, missed the entire Thriller Bark saga, and more. This also means that Zoro didn't meet Ryuma, and subsequently didn't get Shisui. Not only did Zoro's swordsmanship not grow as much, but Shisui, one of his key weapons, never even got into his own hands. This will have a massively negative impact on how he handles situations, because there's even a chance that his mindset of earning the title of the greatest swordsman in the world, no matter what, might have also been affected. However, during the traveling arc, nothing much happens, which is actually a bad sign, and it will eventually lead to the most horrific events in the next arc. If you've watched One Piece or have read the manga, which I assume you have, then you might know that Sabaudi Archipelago is a very important destination for the world government, to the point where world nobles could also be found there. Zoro decided it was time to get some food and buy some drinks after traveling for a long time, but he got lost. Same as the original timeline, he arrived at an area where a celestial dragon, Saint Charlos, was doing some unethical stuff with his slaves. He was also oppressing the local population. Zoro was wondering why no one did anything to help those poor people. Everyone is looking at him as Zoro walks down the middle of the street towards the celestial dragon. Without even thinking about it, he straight up just insulted Saint Charlos, which prompted the guy to instantly shoot at him. As a response, Zoro instinctively dodges and draws his sword. Unlike in the original timeline, though, Bonnie wasn't able to push him away. She was too late and didn't react fast enough. Zoro instantly cuts him down, and everyone at the scene is shocked. The citizens started running inside their homes and locking their doors, while the pirates present there decided it was best to run away. With the celestial dragon dead, the world government responded with so much force that Sabaudi Archipelago was instantly surrounded by ships and marines. Thousands of soldiers arrived with dozens upon dozens of high-ranking officers and even vice admirals. But the worst thing about this situation was that an admiral arrived, and it was no other than Kizaru. With the marines, they turned the entire island upside down just to find Zoro. Seeing that his actions increasingly made the world government commit horrendous and oppressive acts against the citizens of Sabaudi Archipelago just to find him, Zoro decided it was time to reveal himself and fight his way out. Zoro first cuts down an entire squad of marines, making his way towards Kizaru and hopefully breaking through out of the encirclement. But with his current skills and just the huge gap of power that stands between them, Zoro couldn't push far enough, and he was stopped by the admiral. Both of them clashed, and even though he was giving it his all, he just couldn't deal any damage to Kizaru because he instantly transformed into light. His back was also being surrounded by marines, so instead of escaping, he was surrounded. Zoro was getting tired, and Kizaru was just toying with him. With no stamina left, and his wounds sapping every little drop of energy he had left, Zoro lost the fight. He was captured by the marines, and was eventually imprisoned on Impel Down. Not to mention, because he did kill a celestial dragon, the world government planned on executing him. But what if we make the story a bit more interesting? You see, Zoro would have died then and there. But what if the leader of the God's Knights, St. Figureland Garling, acknowledged his skill and potential? If you didn't know, the God's Knights are basically the royal guards of the world government, and their leader even has the authority to kill celestial dragons. Before he could be executed, a request came in from the innermost organizations within the world government, ordering that he be delivered to the God's Knights headquarters. There, Zoro was given a choice by Figureland Garling. He either submits to him and joins their ranks, or he'll be killed in an instant. Left with no choice, let's say Zoro agreed to become a member of the God's Knights. As his training commenced, he was, without a doubt, a rising star. He quickly became a figurehead, and because of his raw potential, became Figureland's right-hand man. Now you know what's better? We'll make things even more exciting, and say that Luffy actually survived, managed to get to the Grand Line, beat the enemies he was supposed to, and eventually defeated the two emperors and unlocked Gear 5. But in this timeline, there have to be some changes with regard to his crew, and the only ones I can see that will still be with him are Nami, Usopp, Chopper, Frankie, and maybe Brook. Let's also fast forward a bit and imagine that this is the final war in One Piece. Luffy with his allies, the Whitebeard pirates, Red Hair pirates, Giant pirates, the Great Straw Hat Armada, and more have come to face the admirals, the Gorosei, the Marines, and the God's Knights. By this point in time, as the vice commander of the God's Knights, Zoro has reached his peak, but his sword style hasn't changed that much, with a three-sword style still his main technique. technique. The battle begins, and the two sides engage in a monumental battle that would shake the very foundation of the world. Seeing that he still retains his personality, Zoro goes in for the kill and immediately blitzes towards Luffy, who has activated his Gear 5. He thinks that if he kills the supposed Pirate King, then he can truly become the greatest swordsman in the world. As Zoro slashes Luffy, his sword becomes wobbly, and immediately he feels the Toon Force, slowly consuming him. His attack does nothing but blow away Luffy, and he spins around and lands a punch straight into Zoro's stomach, making him kneel and do a cartoony ouch face. Their duel keeps on going, and Zoro forces himself to use his strongest attack, King of Hell, Three-Sword Serpent, 103 Mercies Dragon Damnation. He believed that every sip of pain and suffering had led him to this point, and that this attack would either make or break his entire legacy. He charges forward, and to answer this insanely powerful ability, Luffy uses Bajrang Gun, and the sky becomes his fist. The two clash, and it creates an explosion so large that most of the low-ranked soldiers on the battlefield are either blown away by the shockwave, become unconscious because of the monstrous amount of Conqueror's haki, or both. As the dust settled, however, Zoro's swords were bent, and he lay on the ground in the middle of a massive crater. He was defeated by Luffy, but as a testament to his strength, even though Gear 5 was activated, he gave Luffy a scar on his knuckles. He would never reach his goal as the greatest swordsman in the world, even if he became a member of the God's Knights. And as for the final battle, well, that's a what if for another time. Make sure to subscribe and smash the like button. More videos coming soon.